Welcome back everyone to FinTech Festival India's Bengaluru Micro Experience. And this is an event which is brought to you by Thales and Exclusive Networks. Our next session is a presentation on FinTech privacy and security in the new data-intensive financial sector. I would like to invite Mr. Prakash, Senior Business Development Manager, Banking and Enterprise, India, Thales Group, to make the presentation. And with that, it's over to you, Ved.
Yeah. Thanks, Amit. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm Prakash, and I lead the business development for Thales Data Protection Solutions for Banking and Enterprise in India and SAARC region. So this is one of the very interesting topics in this, in line of the theme that we had with the FinTech Micro Experience event. And I would touch upon some of the key areas. So the agenda that I have called out would be talk about organization Thales. Some of you might be aware, some of you may not be knowing who we are, and that would help you to know where we are coming from and how we help the FinTech ecosystem from data security point of view. Thales has also come out with the latest data threat report 2022. This will be available for all of the participants here to download, and I would touch upon some of the highlights to let you know what is that recently is buzzing in FinTech ecosystem from addressing the cyber threat landscape. Then very important piece that comes for doing business is meeting these regulatory and compliance drivers, and how that also becomes critical for helping the data protection aspect in your business being addressed. So that would be another area to cover. A very important slide for you would be on the problem areas in data protection for FinTech organizations, and I'm sure you would relate with some most of the problems that I would be calling out, which based on our experience in working with the customers out here. Then we will talk about what are the key technology considerations in data protection, which enables you to meet these kind of solve this kind of problems that organizations are experiencing, and how the Thales next generation data protection platform called Cyber Trust would really address all of these areas that we would cover in the presentation today. So I will give a quick overview, and post that there are technical workshops, so which we do with a specific request from our audiences and participants or the customers, and if you feel that would be also equally beneficial for you, definitely let me know. And in the end, in interest of time, we will see if there are questions which I can also take it up. So that's the discussion flow for all of you. Stay tuned for the next 15 to 20 minutes of a very insightful session coming out from me for helping you to address the data protection concerns in your organizations. So Thales is an organization, just a quick thing, it's a French organization. We have been in India since 1953, and we work in very strategic high assurance technologies, primarily in field of defense, governments, banks, and it is one of the leaders in especially on data protection side where I come from. Thales is the recognized global leader in offering encryption and key management technologies. As a footprint, we are spread across 68 countries, and we have 81,000 employees. And a significant pointer that out here is that we roughly spend close to €1 billion in our innovations and R&D to tackle the emerging cyber threat landscape in India. So that's the quick about from organization perspective. And a bit of background in terms of how Thales has grown through inorganic growth journey that we had. We had acquired a company called SafeNet, which was pure play into encryption and key management space, and then that was acquired by Gemalto, and Gemalto got acquired by Thales. So that's where the legacy of the data security and the digital security business comes in for strengthening the Thales portfolio. So these are the three technology products or solutions that we offer to our customers. They are bucketed in three product categories. The number one is called HSMs, or the crypto processors, which is helped to safeguard the digital trust, in, especially the protection of private keys that used to do the digital signing or used to store the ATM pins or the transaction pins. So they come in two form factor. One is the general purpose HSM, the second one is payment HSM. They are widely used by most of the financial organizations in India today. The other product category is our Cipher Trust platform, which I would touch upon, which offers you the encryption and centralized key management to manage the heterogeneous encryption environment in your organization. And the third one is high-speed encryptor, which safeguards the connectivity between your data centers and DR sites, or addresses the issues related to data in motion with respect to use cases. So all these products are global leaders in their respective categories, and that empowers us to really discuss with you on how these solutions would really help to address the use cases that I would be talking about in my next slide. So before I begin, I fondly use the Mike Tyson's punchline, which says that everybody has a plan until they get punched on the face, and that's which will enable you also to be ready to have a punch, if not with the subsequent pointers that I would talk into the next slide. So the key problem areas today in data protection, these are the challenges I would also like say which are witnessed across the organizations today. Number one starts with customer data privacy. We heard about data privacy issues in the panel discussion in the morning, and this is very pertinent for all the organizations dealing with PII data. How do you ensure the data privacy technologies really would be in place to address those aspects? Second thing would be in terms of the data visibility. We don't know in terms of where the data is living, how to do and what data to secure. So that is another significant piece that organizations are today struggling to understand and have the visibility around it. Third is again a very common challenge which is related to data breaches and ransomware attacks. We see how do we address those threats coming from insider and privilege misuse, and how do you ensure that data breaches are not causing you harm in terms of reputational damage, in terms of non-compliance to certain regulatory guidelines. So that is another key challenge area. Third is definitely the enforcements and regulatory mandates, which we see overgrowing and really focusing on need for such technologies. Maybe there are so much of regulatory bodies today, and upcoming data privacy bill, which would again cut across all the sectors in terms of bringing the basic data security hygiene in the organization. Then data sovereignty, which is another very important area for organizations which are making their journey in cloud. The key understanding out here is that while you are moving in cloud, the clouds would be definitely giving you security around it, but this data inside the cloud is your prerogative, and you have to define security around it, and you have to control the security with yourself. And that is where this aspect needs to be done, how technology would enable you to get the control of the security in the cloud. Other problem is in terms of data silos, which we have foreseen that traditionally a lot of organizations have gone for a single purpose kind of technologies, which helps you to address a specific business use case. But over a period of time, it becomes very difficult to manage and complex, and creates data blind spots, and that leads to a lot of vulnerabilities within the ecosystem, and that needs to be taken care. You need to have a centralized view for across the safeguards that's there in the ecosystem. How do we achieve that? That would be another area. And then the last and very important piece is on risk mitigation side. Which technology control do I need to take? Whether it is encryption, whether it is tokenization, whether it is data masking, and if we are doing encryption, whether we should do encryption at application level, file level, or at database level. What would be the right approach for it? And how do we have a centralized console of managing the heterogeneous encryption environment existing in the organization? So those are centralized key management system is one of the challenges. So these are very important problem areas, and Thales technology solutions helps to address all these problem areas in data protection. So a quick highlight about the data threat report that I will just touch upon the summary. This report would be shared with all of the audiences out here, and you can go ahead and click on this link for your consumption as well. But the outcome from this threat report, which has been done by surveying extensively across 900 organizations spread across APAC region, and we have seen that most of the participants have mentioned it out that yes, it is becoming very difficult and tedious to manage the privacy and protection, especially in the cloud kind of an environment, and then with ransomware attacks rising, they are also changing the breach economics, which needs to be addressed. And another area was that while definitely people are moving towards using encryption, but still the adoption is not at a great level. So that has been some of the findings. The next that basically had been in terms of the problem with cloud, that most of the organizations that we discussed this, that 90% of them are using either infrastructure as a service or platform as a service or SaaS environment in the cloud ecosystem. And cloud ecosystem, particularly the security, would be a shared responsibility where customer would be responsible for the data residing in the cloud, and cloud service provider would be responsible for the security of the cloud. And with spreading across multi-cloud, that is making things even more complex and exposing a lot more data risk as well. So these are some of the challenges which most of the organizations are facing through that whom we had surveyed. And that is where I deep dive in terms of explaining further on the cloud service provider shared responsibility metrics, which clearly abdicates that data security remains the customer responsibility, irrespective whether you adopt the model for infrastructure as a service or the platform as a service or software as a service. The security of data resides your responsibility, and hence you need to design or see what controls would enable you to have the visibility around that data protection. Other top cloud security concern areas that we found out was primarily on getting the organizations who are using the native encryption or the key management service from the cloud service provider. The encryption key visibility is the #1 challenge, in the sense you don't get to know how their privileged users or super admins are using these keys, when are the keys being accessed, and as such you do not have the visibility. And in theory, the cloud owner can look into your data, which no organization would like to have. So that's one of the challenges. Secondly, definitely data loss in terms of insufficient authorization and DR controls would lead to data loss. Vendor lock-in is one of the scenarios where organizations don't want to log in with specific cloud service provider, and then internal and external certain compliance mandates also don't facilitate them to really move the critical workloads in cloud, and how do they design controls around it to meet these compliance mandates. And last but most critical would be the key lifecycle management, especially from the time these encryption keys are created to distributed to rotated and then purged or deleted. How, and especially when it is spread to multi-cloud, it becomes very manual, error-prone task. And how do we do the lifecycle key management or through an automatic process or tool? These are the risk areas that need to be looked upon, especially when you're having journey in cloud. And #1 challenge that I called it out in terms of what is the control of security that I am left with when I migrate critical workload in cloud, and how well I am getting the visibility of those controls. I think this is what roughly has been summarized in my slide in front of you today. And this comes to a finding that we have seen in terms of in threat report that organizations who have adopted encryption, especially does not need to comply with the stringent timelines of reporting a data breach that might happen in their organization. Now, Certain has come up with a notification that you need to report breach within 6 hours of time frame. Now, this becomes very difficult for a lot of organizations to identify and understand how the data breach has happened. Whereas if you have already adopted these techniques or technologies, like then they may not need to report altogether, because there is no data loss as such, because it's an unencrypted data. So main causes of data breach, primarily if you see what is identity theft, and then 95% of them have said that it is unencrypted data. And that also tells me that attacks like ransomware is nothing but it's a rogue encryption. They only work because you do not have the good encryption in place. And hence, these are the real main causes for data breaches that we have seen. And another pointer which I explained earlier was data silos, as a lot of disjoint products exist in an organization, and they only safeguard a specific data type, specific environment, and over a period of time this complexity results in a lot of inefficiency, cost escalations, and you don't have a single pane of glass to manage heterogeneous controls that exist in an environment for respective business use cases. So that does create a lot of data blind spots, and this needs to be tackled as well. So what are the data breach targets? Coming to that, it's just not the PII data as most of us think. It is also the data related to your financial information, data related to your health information, data related to your legal information, or the IT security data, primarily your usernames and passwords, encryption keys, and the security status and network structure. So these all type of data need to be protected, and one should not only think that if I'm not collecting PI data, I do not need to bring the adequate controls on data security. You have all responsibility in protecting on all these data types. So a quick study by IBM where we have seen that cost of breach for Indian organizations have really gone up by 18 to 20% in the last 2 years, and most of the organizations who have adopted encryption techniques in their organizations have been able to safeguard this cost of breach. So that's just the pointer to talk that encryption definitely is one of the key controls that enable you in safeguarding the data breaches incidents. So quick, from a regulator perspective, RBI has also come up a long time back guidance which talks about need of encryption and, most important, secure key management system, because encryption itself is incomplete unless you have a proper system for managing those encryption keys safely, and that's where key management becomes very critical for success of encryption. IDRBT has again published the guideline for cloud, and this would really help for the fintech community in the sense that they call out that the control for the encryption keys should be with the user rather than leaving it with cloud service provider, and that's where the approach like bring your own keys really becomes very important to implement to meet certain obligations and guidelines that called out from the IDRBT. So when in the fintech community, typically, if you see when users are sharing their data and you are offering services based on their data, they are putting trust in your organizations, and it is your responsibility to ensure that you uphold that trust. And how do you do that? By enabling security. Security brings that trust to facilitate the business growth. So other compliance drivers, which also I have listed it down right from data protection bill, which is also going to come up. If you primarily see across all these major regulatory compliances, common denominators are need for encryption and tokenization kind of technologies, define an access control against the privileged users, and have a robust secure key management system in place. So if you have these basic controls, you would be abiding across the guidelines that, and even any of the new guidelines that would come up on data protection. So key technologies to under data protection that will enable you would be primarily to start with the data visibility part, which happens when you have a data discovery and classification tool built in, which helps you to know where your sensitive data is, classify its order of sensitivity, and then decide what would be the right data risk mediation controls, whether it will be encryption, it will be tokenization, it will be data masking. And after you have done this data risk mitigation controls, how do you manage these encryption keys centrally? And centralized key management is the heart of all these data protection technologies to enable you to safeguard the journey of data within your organization. So what organizations are looking at today is primarily data at rest encryption, data in motion, and encryption the risk are passed to encryption keys, and key management becomes critical. Who gets the access to these encryption keys? How do you define the access control around it? And if you're moving the journey in cloud, how do I control the data security in cloud? With all single technology solution, that is where organizations are looking for these controls and mechanisms to, and Thales provides you this platform which addresses all these 5 pillars that are serving the requirement areas for most of the organizations today. So quick talk about the platforms. The name of this platform is called Cipher Trust, and it addresses both the data privacy and the data security components, and helps you to safeguard and start the data protection journey right from discovery to use of encryption, tokenization, to do the key management and manage this journey in cloud as well from the same platform. So the heart of the solution is key management. It comes both in virtual and a hardware form factor, and the periphery are the software modules that you see, which depends on the specific need and the business use case you can adopt, whether you want to encrypt at file level, at database level, or application level, or you want to manage the encryption keys in the cloud through the same appliance that would be the key that would be at the heart of the offering that Thales Cipher Trust platform provides. A quick summary on what are the use cases that HSMs that we offer address you. Primarily, the general purpose HSMs helps you to safeguard the private keys used for digital signing. The use cases are also related with Aadhaar number and Aadhaar data vault, or if you are protecting the keys by offloading the TLS and SSL keys within the HSM. And for payment, it is primarily anything that you do to enable the card transaction, whether it is the PIN or it is the transactions that are being met. So these are, we can discuss in detail in terms of the use cases that would resonate with your requirements. But at this point of time, I would just put up a summary that these are the specific use cases that we are doing. So with this, I come to my last slide, which basically talks about the patented technology that we offer, which is called encryption on fly, which is live data transformation. We can discuss more about it in the technical workshop, how it works. And then another is the key approach for bring your own key and bring your own encryption in your cloud journey. How it works, the benefits of it, we will definitely like to explain it further in the technical session. And in the technical workshop, primarily what we do is highlighted in front of you. We help you to understand your encryption strategy, what would work best in your organization, and how do we really empower you to understand the encryption processes mechanism, how the live data transfer works, and how this Cipher Trust platform can seamlessly integrate in your IT environment without disrupting your IT operations or calling out for any application level changes. So with that, I would like to wrap up a quick informative session, and feel free to bring out questions to me, and I would be more than happy to take it up. Over to you, Amit.
Thank you, Ved, and seriously, thank you for that brilliant presentation as well.